What's up, people? I am back for another video. Hold on, just need to... There you go. Anyway, today we're reviewing X2 X-Men United. I remember seeing this in theaters and just being wow. Because I love the first one, but this one was like, oh my god, they stepped it up. You know, Logan's subplot, Brian Cox as fucking as William Stryker as the villain was perfect. That whole mansion invasion always got me. You know, that was always such a good scene. You know, there's still some negatives. Like, I don't like that this movie starts basically the whole Wolverine being in love with Jean. Granted, there is that scene in the end, but then it's like they never move on from that because in the next movie, they fucking further it. It's like, if they had gone from that scene where she chose you, that could have been the moment he realized that he, you know, that... Because he always did, okay, you know, he did always kind of have a crush on Jean, but she was always Scott's girl. You know, everyone knew that. It was one of those things, like, he always kind of had a thing for her, but there was always other girls for him. So it was always weird that these movies had this fixation on making her, that was like what making him with her. So that's like my only real negative. But anyway, everything else though, that opening scene with Nightcrawler is so fucking good. Just attacking the White House, it's so good. Like how it starts, and then the like watching it today, the teleportation still holds up. Like it looks good, and yeah, man. And then, you know, yeah, like I said, Wolverine's backstory, like they really explain. That's why I'm a little irked that they always killed Sabretooth, because they should have involved him in this story, because they have always been tied together as characters, and it's like they just didn't. But Brian Cox really kills it as Stryker, because it's like you want him to get his. Lady Deathstrike was cool. I thought Kelly Hu was fine. Granted, Lady Deathstrike in the comics has more of a... Her and Wolverine have always, in the animated series, they did this too, where they had a history. They know she was a former love of his that ended up getting adamantium. But they never... I felt like she should have been explored more. I felt like in this, she's just kind of... She's just basically a goon for Stryker, but it's fine. Like, it's not necessarily a negative. Like, there's still a lot of cool scenes. I love Ian McKellen as Magneto. He's still great. Even though he's not necessarily like the real villain of the movie, he still... I love that scene when he, you know, he flips, because Stryker's son can basically kind of has powers somewhat similar to Professor X's. Can kind of alternate time. Well, not time, but the world, and basically uses his son to basically to force him to go to Cerebro and destroy basic mutants. But then Magneto reverses it to make it attack humans. It's like, Magneto, you sneaky motherfucker. It's such a good scene. It's so, like, he's so good. And then that breakout scene is great too. I think they definitely amped up the story. I love the effects, the score. I think the score for this movie is very underrated. Like, the main theme of X2, which to me is like kind of the main theme of this version of the X-Men, has always been very underrated. Like, a lot of people don't, when you think superhero score, not a lot of people talk about this one. I think it's really good. Like, that opening score always got me. I remember that first played, and just the hype for that movie for me was so real. And I think they definitely try to make the suits look a little bit better. Like, obviously, they could, you know, still not really do the black leather, but it's fine here. They at least try to make the suits, give it a little style. They didn't just make them look generic, so I think they definitely fixed that a little bit. Xavier is great. I love this whole story. I've always loved X2. To me, it's always been the one I watch always after. I think they definitely stepped up from the first one. I love the first X-Men, but I think this is like step up like a motherfucker. That's probably what I'm gonna call it, this video, because it's really what they stepped their fucking game up. Like, like I said, that opening Nightcrawler scene is just so good. That scene when they should have went with Mystique and Wolverine. Like, there's a scene where they're in a tent, you know, she poses as Jean, but it's like they should have kind of explored, because in the comics they were a thing. It's like if instead of the whole gene thing. Rogue, I think another one, one of my problem issues was kind of how they did Rogue in the last movie. They definitely fixed that. Like, they definitely try to have her show a little bit of her personality. She's not just angsty fucking Rogue like she was in the last movie. So I think they did the smart thing there. Like I said, that scene in the mansion is so good. Because you feel bad, like you just see all these SWAT dudes just breaking in. And yeah, so out of 10, this is almost, I'd borderline give this, you know what, for comic book movie, fuck it, I'll give it a 10. Rare, like, do I just flat out give a movie a 10, but this movie is great. That scene with Jean in the end is tragic, and he obviously was about to set up Phoenix, and they fucked it up with that third movie, which I will be reviewing the third movie, but you know what, I might try to see if I can fit it in for next week, because I do want to talk about it, and then I'll save the other ones after Halloween time. I'll probably do them in November, even though November is still going to be a little bit Halloween-y, but I think for now I do want to set aside time for Halloween stuff, but definitely I do want to talk 3, because 3 was such a letdown. It's like Bryan Singer decided, you know what, let's go fuck up Superman and do Superman Returns, and then for whatever reason, he decided to fuck off to do that movie, and then they got someone else to do 3, and it just suffered. Killing Professor X was dumb. The way they did it was dumb. Jean's death is undone. That's when also they really leaned into the whole Wolverine being uber in love with Jean. Waste of Phoenix. Kelsey Grammer's Beast was good. That's like probably one of the only real positives. And then that scene with the bridge where Magneto's like lifting it, I'll admit that's pretty cool. The Golden Gate Bridge. But aside from that, everything else about that movie is pretty shit. But I'm gonna go in on that next week. Probably not Friday though. Probably I might, maybe not Monday. Maybe Wednesday. I'll do X-Men 3. So we'll maybe do it Wednesday. And then Thursday, I'm gonna find a horror. We're gonna be doing a lot of horror stuff, so I might kick it off with Wolf Creek. So I probably will do that Tuesday. So that's gonna be what kicks it off. So anyway, X2. Tomorrow I will be doing talking about the Halloween rights and what's going on with that. Like Miramax basically just shopping the franchise around and trying to see who's the potential buyer. I think they're trying to do it for TV rights and movie rights. So I figured, since you all know me, I'm a big Halloween fan, so I might as well talk about that. So, and then Sunday I'll be doing a Screen Rant is Gay. We'll be bringing that back. But anyway, let's get into X2. Yeah, we get that kick-ass intro, like I mentioned. I fucking love it. That whole score. So that opening scene is so good with Night. Because yeah, you just start off in this White House tour, things just seem normal, and then Nightcrawler starts attacking, taking dudes out, and the way they did the cinematography, how it would because each room was the lead up to the president's room, like kind of safety room. So good, and the way they would look through like the peephole, it's so fucking great, man. And the teleport effects look really good. And at that point, we don't know that because Stryker's been doing experiments, and he uses this kind of sedative that basically, like this kind of thing that basically kind of mind controls mutants. Like he did it with Magneto earlier in the film, later in the film. So yeah, so he ends up attacking the president, taking out a lot of his guys. I've seen there that when the door opens and it's just a bunch of blue smoke teleport effect. Like, bro, that was crazy. They really Bryan Singer, I got to give him credit if he was the one who decided he came up with that idea for because we didn't get to see Nightcrawler in the last movie. I guess another negative. They definitely got the religious aspect because Nightcrawler's religious, but I think they should have made him a bit more jokey. I think they try to make him too serious. Like Nightcrawler, there are versions where he's relatively serious, and there are storylines where he does get serious, but he's always kind of like I look at him as kind of like the Flash to an extent of X-Men. Like he's a bit jokey, especially in the animated series, and I think they should have leaned into that. But I get it; they leaned into more of the religious aspect, and it's fine. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything. It's just I did like his look, though. I think like the whole trench coat. So then we see Wolverine at Alkali Lake. It just seems like it's just this empty nothing, and then he goes back to the school. This is where we get Wolverine and Professor X. Wolverine and Professor X have a scene like because Jean and Storm are looking for Nightcrawler because Professor X is looking for his location, and I love the Cerebro scenes. I just love it, and I love the banter. Yes, the Wolverine's basically forced to watch over the kids the night, and while this is happening, Stryker forces Magneto to tell him where the school is. Well, before we get an introduction to him talking to the president, and with Senator Kelly, who's really Mystique in disguise. Then we get a scene of Mystique breaking into, posing as Lady Deathstrike, going into the office. I did like that scene. I do wish she got a bit more dialogue, but I get it. They're trying to make her brainwash because that's basically what that thing does. It kind of brainwashes me. It's like it forced Magneto later on to give up the location of the school and everything, like location of Cerebro and all that. Later on with the film with Cyclops, which I guess I'm going to go into really quick. Cyclops, man, I feel bad because I'm not even the biggest Cyclops fan. I've never really was with the X-Men. Y'all know me, I'm more of a Wolverine guy. But I do feel like he did kind of get, in the first one, he was like, you saw that he was supposed to be like someone like the Cap of the X-Men, He's the main leader. He's like one of the OGs, one of Xavier's first students. And it's like, they did kind of, in this movie, fucking didn't really do shit with him. Like, he takes Professor X to talk with Magneto, then he gets captured, and then controlled for a bit. It has like a little fight with Jean, and then towards the end, I did like his performance when Jean died. I admit that was real. That was like Cyclops would do that. He would be very against her just going out like that. But it's like I wish we had more of him in the film. He should have been really more involved with the story. I think that'd been my only fix. But it doesn't bring down the movie though. Like that's like my only if I had to say criticism, but it doesn't bring it down my grade. Because overall, I still think there's more good than bad. I love Iceman in this movie. I think the guy who plays him pretty good. They definitely fix Rogue. I think she's obviously not perfect. She's not full on sassy Rogue. There's a moment though when it was a Mystique and Magneto kind of shit talk her because obviously what happened in the last movie, and Rogue was like ready to go. I'm like, okay, that's Rogue right there. Like, she would be ready to fight a bitch sometimes. So it's like, I did like that. They definitely fixed her. They toned down the whole fucking angsty thing. So that night, Wolverine and Iceman are talking, and then one of the students notices a guy, and it's a guy in military wear, shoots a sedative at the kid, and they start sedating all of them and capturing them. And this is where we get the invasion. While this is happening, we have Magneto and Professor X, which I did like this scene. You know, Magneto revealed what happened, and then, like, fumes come in, and Professor X gets taken out. You know, Professor X calling for Scott. It's very well done. And then, yeah, Scott just gets taken out by Lady Deathstrike. You could question, like, how did she get up from just getting fired from Scott's beam? But she is made of adamantium, like Wolverine. So Wolverine could probably take a Cyclops. It's fine. It didn't really bother me. I just wish he did more in the movie. That's all. But yeah, so Wolverine starts fighting motherfuckers, and man, yeah, when he starts just letting loose, taking out the guys trying to protect the students, that's Wolverine, man. That's all I remember. That's the biggest thing I remember from this movie a lot, is this whole sequence. Wolverine just taking out these motherfuckers. You know, obviously his war cries and just taking, yeah, dude. And then you grow up and it's like, man, I would love an R-rated, and we obviously eventually got with Logan, but I would, obviously not canon, but like a Hugh Jackman when he's kind of younger Wolverine. It would have been cool if he had a younger Wolverine R-rated movie where he is just like, one thing that could be a positive sidebar with Deadpool 3, which obviously I have my reservations about. I don't even really like them bringing Hugh Jackman back, but I would be down for an R-rated Wolverine scene. I would be down for more of that, because this kind of one thing I've always wanted. But yeah, Wolverine just taking out Wolverine was just Wolverine in this scene. This is where he and Stryker see each other. Wolverine's like almost willing, because he thought probably Stryker's just gonna tell him everything. And this is where he was getting like dreams of what happened, and we're getting kind of more and more clear what happened, like him as Weapon X and him breaking out. They don't have like a flat out, like you see it in like visions, almost in dreams, not necessarily like nightmares, I guess. So I really love that. Like they really did a good, relatively, if you wanted to do a Wolverine origin, it's kind of almost a good, because you kind of get an idea of what happens. You don't see it, but where we find out Wolverine was a willing participant. Granted, this was later in the movie, but so not Cyclops. Bobby manages to kind of save Wolverine. Makes an ice wall between them, like an ice wall between him and Wolverine and Stryker, so they get away in Cyclops' car. They go to Bobby's parents' house. Oh, I kind of skipped over the scene where Storm and Jean just got Nightcrawler. We find out that he was controlled. Like, he didn't even really remember what happened. Like, he didn't remember he attacked the White House and all that. Oh, I also skipped the opening scene with Pyro, which, to be honest, it really isn't worth talking about. It was kind of cool to see Professor X kind of like freeze time. That was cool. But I didn't really, it wasn't like that great of a scene where I needed to talk. But Pyro was cool, though. Like, he was always a cool villain. You saw the little setup for him, and obviously the scene later. So now back to Wolverine at Bobby's house. He finally has a beer. I love that scene. Just the moment he finally has a beer, because he wanted to drink a beer at school, but they didn't have any because it was out of school. So it's like, I just love that about Wolverine. They got Wolverine pretty much an alcoholic. Like, that's his character, and it makes sense. So Bobby and Rogue kiss, but obviously he gets a little hurt. But it's okay. Like, I really did like the relationship. That was the other thing about 3 I didn't really like too. Them trying to do whole Kitty Pryde thing. I think that was not needed. There was no setup for it. And I'm going to say in the video, I don't fucking care. Ellen Page. I'm not going to say Elliot Page, because she's a girl. Fuck it. I don't fucking care. She's a girl. So I am going to call her Ellen Page. At least for that video, anyway. But the whole love triangle thing wasn't needed anyway. I felt like Rogue and Bobby, I actually thought they had chemistry, to be honest. and it was like a nice little evolved evolution of her character. Like even that's all I really needed. Like, and I just felt like they. Yeah, anyway, that's when I'll talk about that more when we get to 3. But so Bobby's parents get home. Bobby tells them the truth about him being a mutant, and obviously they freak the fuck out. And his brother just ultimately freaks out and just calls the cops. The cops show up. Wolverine runs outside with his claws out after talking to Jean and Storm and telling him to get there fast. And the cop ends up shooting Wolverine because he retracts his claws. And then Pyro attacks the cops and starts destroying shit, which, yeah, you kind of get an idea. Because Pyro in the comics is a villain. He ends up going with the Brotherhood. I don't remember if he actually starts with the X-Men in some of the other versions, or if it's just straight up he starts out as just his own villain. But I thought the actor did good for the role he did. So Bobby ends up getting away from his parents. Yeah, fuck his parents, basically. So Jean and well, after what Rogue kind of takes some of Bobby's powers to, not Bobby's, Pyro's powers. I'm just gonna call him by his name. And basically drain his powers to kind of quell the fire. Jean and Storm arrive. Then we get a chase up between them and some jets, which actually was pretty cool. I always love the X-Jet in these movies. That's the other thing. I always loved it. I had the toy of it. I think it was from this movie as a kid. And I always thought it was just such a cool, the way it came out of the fucking basketball court is always cool. So yeah, it gets shot down. Well, if they killed one jet, they took one jet down, and then the other one manages to get a shot, and then Magneto saves them. Oh yeah, because after this point, Magneto breaks out because Rogue, now keep saying Rogue, Mystique, poses in. This is where we get human Rebecca Romijn, and man, back when movies didn't, have a problem with showing women being attractive and using her, she used her, feminine woes. She attracted the bodyguard, the bodyguard at the facility that Magneto's in, and put some basically just iron in it, drugged him and put some iron and drugged him like with some beer, act like they're gonna hook up, and then she injected him with iron so Magneto can break. That scene is that's another one scene where it's like, holy shit, like where he pulls out the dude's blood. Like, you got a little bit of iron in you. Just see the iron coming out of his chest is like, bro. Magneto is dangerous, and then he just makes a fucking ball, like it makes little iron ball like spears and just starts shooting. I was gonna say balls, and basically break out. So he saves the X-Men and tells them about what happened and learns about the facility. The Alkali Lake is an underground facility, and then they send in Mystique as disguise. There's a scene where Wolverine thinks he's hooking up with Jean. Well, he and Jean had a scene, and Jean basically elaborates that it sounds like she's really what she prefers to. She wants to stay with Scott. That Scott's her man. Which I just hated that this movie kind of did set that up a little bit. It's like Wolverine did have a crush on her, but he always ultimately knew that she was Scott's. It just, I don't know. It didn't really feel like it was needed in the franchise, to be honest. I love this movie, but I didn't need that. Ultimately kind of brought the movie down a little bit. Not this one, because at least in the end they acknowledge it, but then it's like the third one throws it out the window, so that, to be fair. So you can't really blame this film for that. Because at least in the end they kind of seemed like the setup that, no, ultimately she chose you, Scott. So, yeah, and then you could have had a perfect setup with him and Mystique, because him and Mystique had a thing in the comics, so it would have made sense. Him and Mystique, or him and Storm, I would have been fine with. You trying to force this whole him and Jean thing, just no. So, but yeah, the next day, Mystique poses as Logan, And I love the scene that instantly Stryker knew, like, I know my own work. That's not fucking Wolverine. I know my own work. And she breaks out, breaks into the control room, which has, like, magnet locks. And Stryker's team are basically ordered to try to break it down. The team break in. This is where we get basically Wolverine versus Lady Deathstrike, which I actually really like this fight. I really thought it was a fun little fight. I wish they had histories. You could have went into that. I like the whole they were a couple thing, and then she got corrupted by the adamantium, and maybe you could make her straight out evil. And it seemed like towards the end they kind of did that, because like when he injects her with like the rest of the adamantium, which that's what ultimately kills her. It's like her eyes like almost became normal. It's like her real self almost came out, but it's like they didn't. I don't know. They could have did more with that in that sense, but I did like the fight. Like it was a well done fight. Like Wolverine thinks he's won, and then she just like starts climbing. It's like, and even like when she first does something, fucking Wolverine's just holy shit. It's so good. It's such a good little fight. But yeah, Wolverine kills her. Cyclops is controlled, attacks Jean, but then he realizes that like when Jean gets hurt, so then they have to try to break out the kids, the captured students, and then try to get out of the facility. Professor X is being controlled by Stryker's son. He can use Jason's powers to control. Basically, Jason kind of can control other mutants in a sense. So he controls Professor X to basically use Cerebro to essentially destroy mutants. Because Professor X, and I do like that this movie does show like the true Professor X really fucking powerful. If you think about it, he could kill every mutant essentially. But Magneto takes out Stryker's guys, breaks in the room, and changes it to, because Mystique poses as Stryker, and they change it to humans. And it's like, Magneto, you fucking sneaky motherfucker. He's so good. And I love how he he uses the helmet when he looks at Jason. He just like fucking pokes his helmet. It's so good. It's like, yeah, Ian McKellen, I think he still got to shine in this movie, even though he wasn't like the main villain. He got to shine still, I thought. And I really do like that this movie shows that Stryker is such a, even Magneto looks down on him. Like, yeah, he's such a sniveling motherfucker. I think Brian Cox played it well. I mean, Brian Cox is great at Manhunt, very underrated. Manhunter, which basically is like a precursor to, he was the original Hannibal Lecter before Anthony Hopkins. And he's actually not bad. I thought he played a good bad guy in that. So he's a great sniveling motherfucker. Like when Wolverine finally got his hands on him. So yeah, after that, the team gets together. They try to get into the room. Storm decides to use Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler says earlier, I love when movies have payoff and just set up and payoff. Where Nightcrawler mentions, I can't see where I'm going. What they mentioned as his teleport. They actually explain his teleportation powers. Gasp. Imagine actually explaining your powers and have it make sense. And then Storm says, and it works as they take him in. Because he doesn't know where he's going. So, but yeah, he manages to get in. And Storm basically causes the weather to get really cold to where Jason basically can't take it anymore. And yet, also Jason's concentration is broken. And Professor X stops and they manage to get him out. And the facility's starting to fall apart. The thing is starting to, the water is starting to rise up. and Wolverine manages to get his hands on Stryker, stabs him, and then ties him. He, like, when he mentions that everybody's gonna die, and he's like, "No, you're gonna die. You're gonna die." He fucking chains him to the helicopter. It's so fucking great. Wolverine goes back in to help the team, and they manage to. Wolverine stops the water from, and then Magneto. Fucking, I love how he like just anchors him. Like Magneto even looks upon it. So he takes to him and Mystique, and then they end up taking up Pyro and leaving. And the team manages to get out, but the jet is having problems, and Jean decides to make a sacrifice and go out and control the jet and try to stop the water so they can get out. And it's a pretty tragic scene, like when she dies. And Cyclops' reaction, like, because she, like, you know, closes the thing. Like when Cyclops tries to go outside, he closes the ramp. She even manages to stop herself from, like, Wolverine tries to tell Nightcrawler, "Can you go get her?" And he's like, or basically, "Go get her," and he can't. Like, she's just not letting me. Like, she's basically that strong. Like, they really did showcase powers good in this movie, I thought. And yeah, she ends up, like, she even, like, takes control of the professor and basically talks through him, which was really great. Like, and you get a showcase of what base, because they were sort of trying to set up her to become the Phoenix, and they just, you know, unfortunately, obviously, we wouldn't know what happens in the next one. But she was still really good. That was a really good scene. And they managed to escape. They go to the White House. The president's about to make, like, an announcement about, like, basically, probably, I don't know if it's like a declaration of war in a way. Obviously, it's going to be something about, like, how it's going to affect the mutants. So they go to the president and talk to him. And I love this scene where Professor X stops time. There's, like, a storm, like an actual storm, like storms causing a storm. And the team basically try to tell the president to work together. And they even give him information that showed that basically Stryker was behind everything, including the attack on the White House. And then basically you make it. I love that scene. It's like a perfect, like, little setup for this version of the X-Men. And then Xavier and Cyclops kind of have like a Cyclops, and the rest of the team have like a moment about, you know, Jean's death. And then they manage to this is where we get Wolverine telling Cyclops that she chose you. And then it cuts to Alkali Lake, and we see a Phoenix shape, which obviously is supposed to be setting up Phoenix, and then they fucked it in the next movie. But I love this movie. I always watch this one. I remember for a while, this was my favorite Marvel movie. This is still probably within the top 5 Marvel movies for sure. This is real. This is iconic. I do prefer, like, a little bit Days of Future Past Road Cut. That I do think that edges it out. I think that film is perfect, and I can't wait to talk about that one. But I do really like this movie. I really think it holds up. Wolverine's story. It's a perfect follow-up. The fact they brought in Nightcrawler and the way they brought in certain more characters, and Brian Cox as Stryker was fucking great. He was a fucking sniveling little bastard. He was like Burke from Alien in that sense. Like, you wanted him to get his, and he did. So Ian McKellen still kills it as Magneto. Same with Professor Patrick Stewart as Professor X. Like, they are those characters. They embody those characters. I love the moments when Professor X is using Cerebro. Even in the animated series, I've always loved that. Like, just him just using Cerebro. And they really showcase powers in this movie, like Wolverine's powers. I mean, even Lady Deathstrike, like, she was stronger than him a little bit. Like, he had to basically overload or basically overdose her with adamantium, essentially. That was a pretty brutal death, though. But But yeah, so out of 10, I gotta give it a 10, man. I love this movie. This is one of those, like, that's in the top comic book films of all time, like, including both companies. So, yeah. Anyway, um, tomorrow I will be talking about Halloween, like I said. I want to see what they will do with this franchise. I'm gonna talk about like maybe like what studio you can give it to because apparently they're doing TV. They're just shopping around the rights, but it also just kind of just proved me right that Halloween Ends was a fucking pile of shit. That basically was just a giant admission y'all fucked up with the last movie because holy shit, man, Halloween Ends definitely hurt the franchise a little bit. Like the fact that when I found out that they basically were just going around saying no, we never intended this in the writing of this being a Laurie versus Michael movie, and then the fucking marketing you did. Anyway, I'll talk about that more tomorrow, but it's just frustrating. So, but it's been kind of cool. I'm feeling vindicated right now. So I'm interested to see who, in terms of TV rights, just a quick glimpse. I wouldn't mind, like, fucking, if they did it like Season of the Witch, the whole anthology thing, I actually wouldn't mind that as a series. If you could somehow get John Carpenter involved, maybe do it on Peacock. You know, like Halloween's like a universal like product anyway. Just put it on Peacock, or maybe HBO Max. It'd have to be one of those. But yeah, in terms of movie rights, I'll talk about that more tomorrow. I can't really think of one who I want to get the movie rights right now, but I definitely think it's just an admission that they fucked up with the last. I don't think trilogies. I do like 2018 still. I just can't really watch it because the trilogy's fucked up. You know, Kills. I like Halloween 2018 and Kills. It's just they really royally fucked up with the last one. It's like the sequel. It retroactively ruins it. It's like at least a Jurassic trilogy, even though Dominion was bad, I can at least say Fallen Kingdom was to me the ending. The dinosaurs break out. I'm okay with that being as the ending. I'm okay with that. But here, like, the way Kills ends, and then obviously how ends, what happens, it's like you can't, there's no going back from that. But I'll talk about that more tomorrow. But yeah, the first X2 is such a classic. I definitely recommend it. Watch X1 and X2 back to back. They're like perfect. They kind of work, in tandem together, even though, yeah, X2 is like a couple years later, but it's like a perfect sequel. But anyway, guys, talk to y'all tomorrow. Cheers. All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later.